This is none other than Edmund DaGeneral, also known as the brand. What I have in store for you tonight, this evening, this morning, for some of you, is the answer. The answer to why blacks from all over will never, ever in life, not in this lifetime and not in the next lifetime, will ever come together as one. Never. Never. The only way that I see this ever happening is if this letter that I am about to read has been addressed, come to council, because there's no one black representative, but we would all have to come as a collective and address these issues and try to have these things eradicated. That is the only way we as one could come together and get rid of this curse that has been laid upon us. What I have before me is the Willie Lynch letter. This is the one thing that has crippled us as a people for so long. Here we go. And he says, "In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if it is installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple list of differences and think about them. On the top of my list is age, but it is there only because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, sex, size plantations, status of plantation, attitude of owners, whether the slave live in the valley, on the hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust, and envy is stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black salve or slave, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slaves versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slaves versus the dark-skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male, and the male versus the female. You must also have your white servants and overseers distrust all blacks. But it is necessary your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are the keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensively for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. This is the most disturbing thing I've ever read. But yet it's so effective to this day. Can we ever get past these things that were mentioned in this letter? Can us as a people finally do something about these matters? Would we actually try to make a difference? Or will we forever be ignorant? It's horrible. Let's make a slave. He says both horse and the N-word are no good to the economy in the wild or natural state. Both must be broken and tied together for orderly production. For the elderly futures, special and particular attention must be paid to the female and the young offspring. Both must be crossbred to produce a variety and division of labor. Both must be taught to respond to a particular new language. Psychological and physical instruction of containment must be created for both. We hold the above 6 cardinal principles as truths to the self-evident based on the following discourse concerning the economics of breaking and tying the horse and the N-word together, all inclusive of the 6 principles laid down above. Note, neither principle alone will suffice for good economics. All principles must be employed for the orderly good of the nation. Accordingly, both a wild horse and a wild or natural N-word is dangerous if captured, for they will have a tendency to seek the customary freedom, and in doing so might kill you in your sleep. You cannot rest. They sleep while you are awake and are awake while you are asleep. They are dangerous near the family house, and it requires too much labor to watch them away from the house. Above all, you cannot get them to work in the natural state. Hence, both the horse and the N-word must be broken. That is, break them from one form of mental life to another. Keep the body and take the mind. In other words, break the will to resist. Now, the breaking process is the same for both the horse and the N-word, only slightly varying in degrees. But as we said before, there is an art in long-range economic planning. You must keep your eye and thoughts on the female and the offspring of the horse and the N-word. A brief discourse in offspring development will shed light on the key to sound economic principles. Pay little attention to the generation of original breaking, but concentrate on future generations. Therefore, if you break the female mother, she will break the offspring in its early years of development. And when the offspring is old enough to work, oh my goodness, she will deliver it up to you, for her normal female protective tendencies will have been lost in the original breaking process. This is so sad. For example, take the case of the wild stud horse. a female white horse and an elderly infant horse, and compare the breaking process with two N-word males in their natural state, a pregnant N-word woman with her infant offspring. Take the stud horse, break him for limited containment. Completely break the female horse until she becomes very gentle, whereas you or anybody can ride her in comfort. Break the mare and the stud until you have the desired offspring. Then you could turn the stud to freedom until you need him again. Train the female horse whereby she will eat out of your hand, and she will in turn train the infant horse to eat out of your hand also. Oh my goodness. When it comes to break the uncivilized N-word, use the same process, but vary in degree, and step up the pressure as to do a complete reversal of the mind. Whew. Take the meanest and most relentless N-word, strip him of his clothes in front of the remaining male N-words, the female, the N-word infant, tar and feather him. Tie each leg to a different horse in opposite directions. Set him fire and beat both horse to pull him apart in front of the remaining N-words. The next step is to take a bullwhip and beat the remaining N-word male to the point of death in front of the female and the infant. Don't kill him, but put the fear of God in him, for he can be useful for future breeding. God dang. The breaking process of the African woman. Take the female and run a series of tests on her to see if she will submit to your desire willingly. Test her in every way because she is the most important factor for good economics. If she knows any sign of resistance, or if she shows any sign of resistance in submitting completely to your will, do not hesitate to use the bullwhip on her to extract the last bit of the B word out of her. Take care not to kill her, but in doing so, you spoil good economics. They look at black people as economics. When in complete submission, she will train her offspring in the early years to submit to labor when they become of age. Understanding is the best thing. Therefore, we shall go deeper into this area of the subject matter concerning what we have produced here in the breaking process of the female N-word. We have reversed relationships. In her natural, uncivilized state, she would have a strong dependency on the uncivilized N-word male, and she would have a limited protective tendency toward her independent male offspring, and she would raise the female offspring to be dependent like her. Nature had provided time with this balance. Oh my goodness. We reversed nature by burning and pulling one civilized N-word apart and bullwhipping the other to the point of death, all in her presence. By her being left alone, unprotected, with the male image destroyed, the ordeal caused her to move from her psychological dependent state to a frozen independent state. In this frozen psychological state of independence, she will raise her male and female offspring in reversed roles. For fear of the young man's life, she will psychologically train him to be mentally weak and dependent, but physically strong. Because she has become psychologically independent, she will train her female offspring to be psychologically independent. What have you got? You've got the N-word woman out front and the man behind and scared. This is a perfect situation for sound sleep and economics. Before the breaking process, we have to alertly on guard at all times. Now we can sleep soundly, for out of frozen fear, his woman stands guard for us. He cannot get past her infant slave process. He is a good tool, now ready to be tied to the horse at a tender age. By the time an N-word boy reaches the age of 16, he is soundly broken in and ready for life's sound and efficient work and the reproduction of a unit of good labor force. Continually, through the breaking of uncivilized savage N-words, by throwing the N-word female savage into a broken psychological state of independency, by killing the protective male image, by creating a submissive, dependent mind of the N-word male savage, we have created an orbiting cycle that turns its own axis forever unless a phenomenon occurs and reshifts the position of the female savages. We show what we mean by example. Take the case of two economic slave units and examine them closely. We breed two N-word males with two N-word females. Then we take the N-word males from them moving and working. Say the one N-word female bear N-word female and the other bears a N-word male. Both N-word females, being without the influence of the N-word image, froze with an independent psychology will raise their offspring into reverse positions. The one with the female offspring will teach her to be like herself, independent and negotiable. We negotiate with her through herm, by her, and negotiate at her will. The one with the N-word male offspring, she being frozen with a subconscious fear for his life, will raise him to be mentally dependent and weak, but physically strong. In other words, body over mind. Now, in a few years, when these offspring become fertile for early reproduction, we will mate and breed them and continue the cycle. This is good, sound, and long-range comprehensive planning. Warning: possible interloping negatives. Earlier, we talked about the non-economic good of the horses and the N-word in their wild or natural state. We talked out the principle of breaking and tying them together for orderly production. Furthermore, we talking about paying particular attention to the female savage and her offspring orderly future planning. Then, more recently, we stated that by reversing the positions of the male and female savages, we have created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever until this phenomenon occurred and reshifted the positions of the male and female savages. Our experts warned us about the possibility of this phenomenon occurring, for they say the mind has a strong drive to correct and recorrect itself over a period of time. If they can touch a substantial original historical base, and they advised us that the best way to deal with the phenomenon is to shave off the brute's mental history and create a multiplicity of phenomena of illustrations that each illusion can twirl into his own orbit, something similar to floating balls in a vacuum. This creation of multiplicity of phenomena illusions entails the principles of crossbreeding the N-word and the horse, as we stated above. The purpose of which is to create a diversified division of labor thereby creating different levels of labor and different values of illusions at each connecting level of labor, the results of which is the severance of the points of original beginnings for each sphere illusion. That is genius and disgusting to even know. Since we feel that the subject matter may get more complicated as we proceed in laying down our economic plan concerning the purpose, reasons, and effect of cross-breeding horses and N-words, we shall lay down the following definitional terms for future generations. 1. Orbiting cycle means a thing turning in a given path. 2. Axis means upon which or around which a body turns. 3. Phenomenon means something beyond ordinary conception and inspires awe and wonder. Multiplicity means a great number. 5. Sphere means a globe. 6. Crossbreeding N-words means taking as many drops of good white blood and putting them into as many N-word women as possible, varying the drops by various tones that you want, and then letting them breed with each other until the circle of colors appear as you desire. What this means is this: put the N-words and the horse in the breeding pot, mix some asses, and make some good white blood, and what do you get? You got a multiplicity of colors, ass backwards, unusual N-words, running, tied to backward-ass long-headed mules, the production of itself, the other sterile. Oh my goodness. The one constant, the other dying. We keep the N-word consistent, for we may replace the mule for another tool, both mule and N-word tied to each other, neither knowing where the other came from, and neither productive for itself, nor without each other. Cross-breeding completed. This is controlled language. Cross-breeding completed for further severance from their original beginning. We must completely annihilate the mother tongue to both the new N-word and the new mule and institute a new language that involves the new life's work of both. You know, language is a peculiar institution. It leads to the heart of a people. The more a foreigner knows about the language of another country, the more he is able to move through all levels of that society. Therefore, if the foreigner is an enemy of another country, to the extent that knows the body of the language, to that extent is the county vulnerable to attack or invasion of a foreign culture. For example, you take a slave. If you teach him all about your language, he will know all your secrets, and he is then no more a slave, for you can't fool him any longer. Being a fool is one of the basic ingredients and incidents to the maintenance of the slavery system. I'm going to repeat that again. Being a fool, just like on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever. Being a fool is one of the basic ingredients of and incidents to the maintenance of the slavery system. For example, if you told a slave that he must perform in getting out our crops, and he knows the language well, he would know that our crops didn't mean our crops. And the slavery system would break down, for he will relate on the basis of what our crops really meant. So you have to be careful in setting up the new language for the slave would soon be in your house, talking to you as man to man. And that is death in our economic system. In addition, the definition of words or terms is only a minute part of the process. Values are created and transported by communication through the body of the language. A total society has many interconnected value systems. All these values in the society have bridges of languages to connect them for orderly working in the society. But for these language bridges, these many value systems would shapely clash and cause internal strife or civil war, the degree of the conflict being determined by the magnitude of issues or relative opposing strength in whatever form. For example, if you put a slave in a hog pen and train him to live there and incorporate in him to value it as a way of life completely, the biggest problem you would have out of him is that he would worry you about provisions to keep the hog pen clean or partially clean, or he might not worry you at all. On the other hand, if you put this same slave in the same hog pen and make a slip and incorporate something in this language whereby he comes to value a house more than he does his hog pen, you have a problem. He will soon be in your house. This is kind of sad. What do you mean kind of sad? This is extremely sad. I pray that one day more people will be aware of this letter or will be aware of the issues that we all are going through as a people. And that we have to remember one thing. We need to clean our own house. We need to clean our own house. That's where it all starts. Once we clean in-house, that's something that we can be proud about, that we can show to others, invite people in. We're not there yet. We're not even halfway there yet. And that's why I said at the beginning, there's no hope unless if these issues have been brought forth, discussed daily to the point where change can occur. That could change a lot. And the impact that it would have on the world would be, it would be incredible. But it's all hope. I'm signing off. Peace.